I'm super pumped today because we've got someone on who is just such a fantastic human being. And I love talking to awesome human beings. Like, who doesn't, right? So, and he is particularly awesome at this point in time because for those of us who are home with children right now, we're feeling a little elevated, right? Like there is now an exponential amount of energy in our house or irritation because you're with teenagers and they're always irritated or whatever it is, right? So we've got extra just like around. And Jay Jackson, who is on the call with us today, is going to walk us through some awesome ways to kind of think about some of the things that you can do with your kids and come at it from the perspective of the Spartan way, which is really how to do some of these activities with intention and purpose. So it doesn't just feel like you're filling time, but that you're actually building a better human, which I totally love. So Jay Jackson, welcome on. I'm so pumped you're here. Jay's from Stanford. He's got 15 years of experience teaching. He's a rock star, wrestling coach background. How long have you known Joe? A decade?
I've known Joe for just over 7 years.
Okay, just over 7 years. So Jay, give us just the quick, version, as quick as it can be, because, quick is sort of relative here at Spartan, right? Talk to us about how you were introduced to Spartan and what your role is kind of today in working with the kids' development and curriculum program.
Do you want the long story or the short story? Do
the short story.
Done. That makes sense because I can go on for a long time. My connection with Spartan is very, very interesting. But basically, what Joe asked me to do was create a curriculum for his brand for kids and adults to really understand why they're doing things or how to be more resilient or how these things are going to make them happy. So that challenge was issued to me about 7 years ago, and I was able to write a curriculum and been able to test it and work with over 200 teachers. We're in schools, we're in SGX programs. So we're, again, like you said, trying to be very intentional about teaching preschool all the way up to adults how to attack challenges mentally the right way.
And why? Right? What is it about what's going on with our kids right now, or, the way that academics is moving that would initiate you and Joe to kind of want to step in a really awesome, productive way? What's the problem?
That's a good question. I think too much of academia is based on results and trying to get grades and things like that. It's not. It's more content focused, and content's important. Don't get me wrong. I teach world history and I absolutely love world history. I think every kid should learn everything they can about world history. However, right. I want to teach the world history and I want to teach these non-cognitive character traits, like how to be resilient, how to be curious, how to have passion, those types of things, because those are things we don't talk about. We do talk about the content in school all the time. We have tests on content and things like that. And again, super important, but can you potentially teach the content and teach them these non-cognitive character traits that they can use not just in world history class, but in sports, in their lives as an adult, in business, and potentially as a parent and a spouse.
Right. Well, I think that's so important because as I think about, building unbreakable kids, right, which is what Spartan aims to do, both on the race course, but off, right? I mean, and really not just with the kids, but with all of us adults, the race is just the starting point, right? I mean, just participating in the race. And even if you only do it one time, or if you make it your career, it elevates you in so many other ways of your life, right? It elevates you in your relationships, in your career. And I think with kids, that's something that sometimes gets so lost in focusing so much on product, right? Did you get an A or not? It's but what about all that other stuff that happened along the way? And how are we building humans that want to contribute in a meaningful way and demonstrate things like wholeness and integrity and commitment and self-awareness grit, resilience. I mean, we could go on and on, which we will, but I love that piece of it, that like there really is purpose and intention behind this program.
Also, if you ask a teacher to describe their favorite student, they're never going to say it's the smartest kid or the best looking kid or the kid best athlete. They don't say those things. It's always, my favorite kid has always been the one that tries hardest, so the one that bounces back from mistakes, all those things. And that's what we're trying to teach. We're trying to make more of that kid that you want in class.
That's right.
More of that resilient kid that's going to, regardless of how smart they are, how much talent they have, they're going to keep pushing and keep coming after it. That's the kid I like.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. Me too. One of the things that I think parents right now at home are struggling with, and I know that I am, is coming up with, things for our kids to do. I mean, we just got literally last night the shelter at home alert on our phone, and it was like both my husband and I were like, ooh! So we know now that it's locked down, and coming up with things to do at home, I think can be really hard because, you can easily just slap a coloring book in front of a kid, right? And hope that it keeps their attention, or throw up, Scooby-Doo on the iPad or whatever it is. But thinking of and coming up with activities that like really engage the kid and get them thinking in a way that they haven't been thinking, I think is really tough for parents right now. So what are some ways that we can do that? And what are some examples you have of some of those activities?
Well, the curriculum I came up with is based off of very simple diagrams and games that are going to get kids to come up with their personal ideas about these kind of concepts. And then, as a history teacher, I'm going to use my history curriculum to push those things along. At home, you can use whatever. If you want a kid to get better at yo-yo, or if you want a kid to, get more fit, then you can couple what I do with one of those things. It's one thing to give a kid like a challenge, like, hey, you're going to do 300 burpees right now. And if they don't know why they're doing it, how it's going to help them, doesn't make any sense to them, and they don't want to do it. However, if you do the mental side first, and then you talk about, hey, this is how this can potentially help you become a better person, not just doing the burpees, but in other ways, then it starts making sense. It's something they're gonna attack. Now, like I said, the curriculum it's all these Spartan philosophies are pretty ambiguous. So what I tried to do is make very simple diagrams so that kids could have a visual, and then you couple that with questions, and then kids can come up with their personal ideas about these things. Because if I sit there and I tell a kid, this is what you need to do to be resilient, they're not going to pay attention to that. However, if I say, here's a diagram, let's talk about it, let me give you some questions, and they're constructing their own knowledge, then that's something that's going to stick and stay with them. Can I show you a diagram?
Yeah, totally. And that's the other thing too that I was just going to ask is like, I don't consider myself a teacher by any stretch of the imagination. So these are things that like parents can do that we don't need like an educational background, correct?
Correct. And what I'm providing is very simple tools. And again, what I do is not rocket science. It's just being very intentional about having these discussions that parents should have with their kids, but they're not having.
Right. Totally.
I'll give you an example. Of one of these diagrams. I don't sleep at night. I've got a ton of these diagrams. Let me see if I can get this down here. So, well, this is tricky.
There you go. Almost. Move to your right. There you go. Yep.
Got it. Okay. So here's the first diagram. Again, super simple. It says tough on top and weak on the bottom, and it says smart over here on the right and not smart on the left. And then you've got quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm a history teacher, but I did talk to math teachers about how to do that correctly. If I'm going to define terms, and I probably have my kids explain these things, but if I'd ask them a question, what do you think smart means? But just for time's sake, I'll tell you, my thought on smart is that it's you taking the time to think about how you could be the best you can possibly be at something. So that's what smart means. It's not intelligent. And then tough means that you are going to persist even when things get difficult. When you start breathing hard, when you're scared, you still keep going. That's tough. Obviously, not smart is going to be you're not taking the time to think about how you can be good at something. And then weak is that you pitch your tent early. You give up right away. So the first question I'd ask kids is, where would you put cheating on this diagram? Which quadrant would it come in? Because they can come up with multiple answers, which is fine. Dissenting opinion for my own is really good. And I will say a lot of kids are going to say quadrant 3, cheating's over here. It's not smart to do, and it's weak. And that makes sense, because if you want to get better at something, then it's, if you're cheating, it's not smart to make yourself better. And it's actually so much easier to cheat than actually figure out how to do something.
Right.
Some kids might put it in quadrant 4 though. And, in which case they say, well, I want to get the A, and that would be smart for me to do it. It's not very tough, but it would get me where I want to go. So they might argue quadrant 4. So again, these questions are open to interpretation, and it leads to a good discussion. And as a parent or as a teacher, I can give my opinion on this, but it's a discussion. It doesn't mean that I'm correct. Second question I might give is, what if you had to run a marathon on this Saturday, and you haven't been training for it? Where would you put that on the diagram? A lot of people are going to put it here in quadrant 2. I know I would put that for myself because I haven't been training for it. It's not very smart. It would be really tough if I towed the line and actually tried to run 26 miles. That'd be super tough, but not very smart, because I might injure myself, and I'm not prepared for it.
Right.
The people that would say it's quadrant 1 for them are the people that are like, I've been training for this for months, and this is how I'm going to get ready, and this is how I'm going to prepare. And I actually follow through and do those things. A next question I would ask kids with this particular diagram is, if you're training, like, let's say you're training for a Spartan race. You've got a Spartan race that's coming up in 3 months. What do the different quadrants look like? What does quadrant 1 look like, 2, 3, and 4? And, if you're going to be smart about it, you're going to think about everything you need to do as well as you can. You're going to plan it out, figure out what workouts you're going to do. You're going to go on Spartan.com
right.
and figure out, do the workout of the day. You're going to eat healthy. You're going to get enough sleep. You're going to do all those things. And then if you're in quadrant 1, it means you're actually going to follow that plan. You're going to do those things. Whereas if you're quadrant 4, you know what you should be doing, but you're just not tough enough to make it happen.
Yeah, totally.
Now, there are people that train, and probably people listening to this Facebook Live, but there are people that are training in quadrant 2. Like, I'm going to get out there every day and I'm going to run 10 miles as hard as I can. And, they're not really planning it out or thinking what they're going to do, but they're just being really tough about it, which it's going to get you better, but not like this.
Got it.
And these are the people that show up on race day, having not trained at all, and just think they're going to go rocket, which, doesn't happen. But what this diagram is trying to get across is deliberate practice.
And what principle does that apply to?
This I'm using it for self-awareness, for example.
Got it.
You got to be aware of where you are in this diagram when you're approaching certain challenges. Like if I'm not self-aware of myself, then maybe I'm going to be in quadrant 2, 3, or 4. I've just got to be aware of my mistakes and then fix those things. If I'm not being smart enough, how do I fix that? If I'm not being smart enough, how do I fix that? And then, if you can have, it sounds like you guys hear that? There's like a monkey going on in the background. No, that's just me. Okay. Maybe I'm hearing things. But you can change this up for your audience. If you have a kid that plays a sport, you can ask them, hey, where are you on this diagram when it comes to your sport? And have them explain that to you.
Yeah.
You can also, like, if they want to pick up a new challenge during this quarantine, that would be great. Like, let's say they want to, get really good at juggling. They're going to have them tell you, where are you on this? How are you going to be smart about it? Then are you going to follow through with it? Because that's how good things happen. When it comes to their schoolwork, where are they? Now, this particular diagram. Oh, and let me say this: when it comes to relationships, this is a great one. Like, I have to look at, during this quarantine, I'm taking a good close look at my relationship with my kids and my wife. Am I being smart about what do I need to do? Do I need to help out more around the house? Do I need to give more hugs to them? Things like that. Am I actually tough enough to do those things?
So parents could use that with siblings too.
100%.
Yeah, that's right. That's great.
You can take this diagram and stick it on the wall, or stick it on the refrigerator. I personally put it up in my classroom, because if I've got a kid and we're working on projects, and I tell the kid, I see a kid's, for 5 minutes they've been doing something else. They've been goofing around, wasting time. Instead of coming down on them, I can just come to them and say, hey, where are you in this diagram when it comes to this project? And they're going to tell me. Sometimes they'll be like, I'm in one. I'll be like, oh, I disagree. You know, this is what I see. And we can have that discussion. Or most of the time they're pretty self-aware and they realize, you know, I know I should be doing it, but I'm just not, you know, and then I'll talk about how do we get ourselves up there. So again, you got to look at what you want to be successful at. And this is the key right here. And that's what I want to get across to kids. That's what I want to be really intentional about. You know, if you're taking the time to be smart and tough about it, then you're going to see yourself improve.
Right. Right. Definitely. That's awesome. I love it. I mean, I love the whole idea of like really kind of just talking through and having an interesting discussion and about it with the kids. And I think too, like for parents out there that are thinking like, well, I have a 6 and 7-year-old at home. Like this wouldn't go well. I can totally imagine my 5-year-old being able to maybe not understand it in the same way that my 9-year-old does, but absolutely like understand some of these things. So I think it can be certainly applied to various age groups. Well,
Jennifer Brazier, who's at the Clarksburg Children's House in West Virginia, she uses this curriculum with preschool kids.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's the best because there's no filter with those kids.
Right.
Like they understand these things. They're simple enough for them to understand. And they really have some meaningful discussions. And she said, you'd be shocked at what 4 and 5-year-olds are talking about.
Totally.
Now, on the other side of the coin, you know, this is being used with adults as well. Totally. So it just changes. You change the questions and you change the conversation. Like if I'm talking with teachers about this, I'll ask a question like, which kid would you rather teach? Would you rather teach quadrant 2 or quadrant 4 and why? And then you can get to some deeper questions. And that's basically all it's going to be. And the more you practice stuff, the more you're going to learn. You can learn a lot from kids. You can learn a lot from adults. You can learn a lot from everybody.
Yeah, totally. I love that. What's another one?
Oh, let me draw one. You ready?
Yep. We probably got time for one more.
Okay, I'll take the same one and just change it up. I do have different formats, but just for time's sake, this one's a good one for the kids too. And again, these diagrams are simple enough where you can just draw it on a piece of paper if you don't have a whiteboard.
Yeah, and I love that idea of, you know, I could certainly imagine, because we've got like a whiteboard in our kitchen to help with the calendar and all that stuff. I could imagine putting that up there. And like, if the kids are having a hard time, walking them over and kind of doing a little bit of a reflection exercise. For sure. And again, I've only got a couple diagrams that use this T-chart, but just for time's sake, we'll toss this up. Yeah, go through it quickly. I'd love to hear it.
It's a completely different conversation. So now it says success up here and failure at the bottom. And this says honorable and dishonorable. That's what I want to get across in this one. I want to talk about honor and dishonor. So I know everybody wants to be in quadrant 1 where you succeed honorably.
Right.
Nobody wants to be in quadrant 3 where you fail dishonorably. But which one's better, quadrant 2 or quadrant 4? And this is an interesting question for kids because, you know, most of the time they're going to say, you know, quadrant 2 is not good. Quadrant 4 is the one you want to be in. But that's why I really feel you need to test kids on these concepts when you're done. So you have this discussion. If they say, oh, it's better to fail honorably, but then you play checkers and they cheat on you, then you can go back to this diagram and say, what happened here? By the way, with the younger kids and with adults too, all you have to do is run a relay race. You know, you have this diagram. They're all like, well, quadrant 4 is the best. You know, it's better to be honorable.
Totally.
But then afterwards, you know, have them run a relay race. And even though that relay race doesn't mean anything, you're going to see a lot of kids leave early and cheat and things like that. Now, I would also ask this question: what if everybody is in quadrant 2? Is it then okay to be in quadrant 2? And very interesting to hear what they have to say. Let me just toss this phone over here because it's beeping. That's out of the way.
Dealing with the elements here, people. We are dealing with the elements.
It's a quarantine, and we're all
here
doing our stuff.
All doing the best we can.
Okay. I will say you're gonna get to know your kids and understand them a lot better because we don't have these deep conversations. Now, I was working with some kids from inner city New York. Dang it! Someone's beeping. Working with the kids from inner city New York, and I asked them which one was better, Quadrant 2 or Quadrant 4, and they all said Quadrant 2, and I'd never heard that before. And so I said, you got to explain that why, tell me why, because I've always heard Quadrant 4. And one student spoke for all of them. He said, look, we live in the projects, and he said, I'll do anything I can to get out. So I'll Quadrant 2 it all day until I get out of the projects, and then I'll start worrying about being more honorable.
Interesting.
Which, I can't say that that's wrong. That's his reality, but it did get me to understand those students a lot more. Now, same thing with your kids. You can get to understand them a lot more on what's going on here. By the way, when it comes to school, you can ask your kids, where do you think that I, as a parent, want you to be, 2 or 4?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I'll be honest. I've asked my class that, and my class almost universally says, these are high school sophomores, they almost universally say, my parents want me to be successful. That's the most important thing to them. They just don't want me to get caught. And I said, gosh, who's telling you? Are your parents actually saying that? They're like, no, but it's understood. So I had them go home with this diagram and talk to their parents and have that conversation. And all the parents came back and said 4, which was interesting for the kids. So again, these are things that we don't talk about, but maybe we should, to build our relationships.
100%. Yeah. Well, and I think that's, one of the things that I think is so important when we are with our kids, whether we like to believe this or not, and certainly I know that sometimes I struggle with it, is like every moment can be a teaching moment, and that can become really overwhelming for us, especially when we feel like we've totally failed the teaching moment, because we've raised our voice just a little bit too loud because they spilled milk or because they smeared banana all over the wall or, whatever it is. But I think there's a flip side of that, which is that, we really can tap into some extraordinary conversations with our children. If we think about that a little bit, and really think about, this could be a moment where we could really lean into something that's uncomfortable and have an incredible discussion about it, that relates, I think, a lot to values and to those Spartan way principles.
Right. And what this provides here is a visual to help facilitate that conversation and a dialogue and a language so you can discuss these things with your kids in a very meaningful but simple way and practical. Right.
Well, Jay, we gotta motor away, but I'm so thrilled to have you here and have you been working on this curriculum for such a long time. And for those of you who are listening and want to learn more, it's available to you. Like, that's what's incredible, is that we have finally rolled out this curriculum. It's called Spartanology for educators and coaches. You can go on learn.spartan.com, which is our new Spartan Edge platform that really provides you with fitness courses, nutrition courses, mindset courses that elevate your performance in life and give you that edge that you're looking for. And Spartanology is one of those courses. Whether you're an educator and coach or not, these activities are all there for you. Jay has some incredible videos where he walks you through those activities. So we're so excited about it. And we know that you will be too, because if you're like me, you're stuck at home and you're trying to work and manage your kids and make vegetable soup all at the same time to boost that immunity. So we need resources, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel when we've got somebody as incredible as Jay Jackson doing it for us. So thank you, Jay. We're just thrilled. We're so grateful to have you on our Spartan team and family.
I'm super excited this is happening, and super excited to be on with you. You're an awesome person, and you're doing great stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.